You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick. Thanks for joining us today, along with Alara LaPlante, a great friend and a great wisdom giver.
Oh, no pressure. Let's go.
No pressure at all. And I don't know, you're just an amazing person and helper, and you help people discover things about themselves and align. So I'm sure throughout this time together, we'll have lots of parts where people will maybe gain a bit of an understanding of what you do. But some of the things I thought about ahead of time that you wrote, that deeper healing, and also aligning the internal with the external world. And that's so much of the work that I've done with you. We're sitting like this today. We're comfortable. We're just being free. And so I think there's so many people out there that want and need help from people like you, and that bringing you here today, sharing what you do, your story, your light is just so important. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
What if somebody comes up to you somewhere and says, let's say they meet you at a freshman high school party and they say, hello, my name is, because that actually happened. My name is, et cetera, et cetera. What do you do? What do you say?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I never quite know how to describe what I do. I just never quite know. That did actually happen to us. Yeah, funny story. So I do a lot of things, but it's really not about what I do. It's about being. I've been on a journey over the past couple decades, really, especially over the past decade. It's really been a deep and intense healing journey to figure out who I am and to become authentically, completely embodied as that being, not the person I thought I was, not the personality that was programmed into me, not what society told me I should be, not what religious dogma said I should, behave as such, but really to untangle, unwind, and unravel and rebuild into an authentic expression of myself, my soul. And along the way, I've discovered all sorts of different systems and modalities and sat with lots of master healers from around the world, worked in medical clinics, done all kinds of things to get to where I am. And I bring in all of those different perspectives, modalities, et cetera, as they are applicable for someone that I sit with. But what I really do is be me. And by being me, I give permission to others to be completely themselves. So, even right down to, hey, I'm going to sit this way for our podcast. Are you cool with that? And, just being at ease. Because what I discovered along the way was my dis-eases, and I had at least 7 different autoimmune diseases, hinging on 8 that I was diagnosed with, and some mental health challenges, different things. Really, they were just states of dis-ease. So what's the solution to dis-ease? Finding what puts you at ease. Becoming at ease in your life.
And it took me a moment, disease to dis-ease.
That's all it is. That's it. Our souls, and this is where I think it's really fun, because I started in studying with my health journey. I actually started having clairaudient experiences, although I didn't know that's what they were at the time. Clairaudient meaning a subtle sense or psychic perception of hearing. These can sometimes be actual audible sounds, or sometimes they're internal, but hearing a voice that is not your own, or sometimes it is your own, that's a whole other story. Anyway, again, these are things that now we would dismiss as crazy, people would have dismissed as crazy until very recently we're starting to find there's so much evidence for psi phenomena being right on point. But I started with my health journey. I was really, really sick, and I was 75 pounds actually heavier than I am now. I had 18 active prescriptions at the time. I was seeing 6 specialists and a primary care physician every month, and I was in bed for about 2 years.
Which is unbelievable to see you and know you as I do today. Shocking.
Unrecognizable. Not at all myself. And being so far out of alignment in my life, it really created that dis-ease. So I started by, I was hearing things, like, this is actually a fun story. The first clairaudient experience I remember really vividly having, I was having a Crohn's flare-up. I was having a Crohn's attack, and I just wanted to go to my son's baseball game. And I could not leave the truck because we had parked the truck near the nearest restroom, right? We're at one of those little league fields where it's like there's nowhere to go if you're going to have a stomach issue. And this is the other thing about me is I'm very raw with things. I'll talk about just about anything. So thanks for having me on your podcast.
But that's what we love, is real and honest and true, because that's how we learn.
Well, you get plenty, exactly, right? Intimacy. Into me, see. So, yeah, I was sitting in the truck and I was struggling, and I was like, I don't understand. I'm doing all of these things. I'm seeing all the doctors, and I heard it's the mushrooms audibly. And I was like, I had, your standard mushrooms on a salad right beforehand. And I was like, well, is this a different kind of mushrooms? Like, what has happened here? But that was and then I started, there were a few other synchronicities, different things that happened that led me to start studying nutrition. But I literally started hearing voices that were guiding me to do that. So I started by studying nutrition. Then I went into working, became a national board certified health and wellness coach, passed the board exams through the Board of Medical Examiners to do that, and was working in functional medicine clinics. And then I started having other psi phenomena and other things happen. Anyway, all of this to say, along the way, I started, not only did I study the modern medical sciences and the integrative medicine portion of the sciences, but I started being guided to look into some of the esoteric traditions, which were the sciences of their day. Things like astrology. Now there are more modernized versions of those, such as human design, the gene keys, lots of other systems that are out there that help us to understand the temple, the body that our soul or our higher knowing, our intelligence designed, and that the symptoms that we have in our body are meaningful. When we have a symptom in our body, there's lots of different ways and different systems that you can use to decode that, by the way, but also just stopping, getting quiet, dropping in and asking can bring a lot of insight. But what is it that the body is trying to tell us? There's always a message, and it's usually a message from our heart and our soul about how our life is not quite in alignment and an opportunity to shift. And that's really it. Whew, that was quite a tangent. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah.
It's the as you said, getting the body, your whole being in alignment with who you are meant to be, your core.
And there is this incredible, I'll call it divine design to everything. There is magic in everything that we think is mundane. There's consciousness in everything. And in studying consciousness, worlds upon worlds opened up to me. And I really have come to believe through, again, studying those, not only the modern sciences, but the esoteric wisdom, and sitting with so many different masters from so many different, I'm in many, many different lineages from around the world. And it's like, I have really come to believe that a higher intelligence, our soul, designed this vessel for us to be the perfect avatar to navigate what it meant to do in this lifetime. And clues from systems like astrology and these other bodies of work, that have been long in existence, they can show us a little bit more about ourselves, these deeper insights as to how we divinely designed ourselves, and what our path and our purpose was. I'm actually going to digress because it feels as if there's a question bubbling.
Oh, no, I was thinking back to earlier when you said consciousness. Sometimes I feel like we as people, we sit here and we say, oh, consciousness. Yeah, I'm awake. I'm conscious. But I think the level that you're talking about is a much different, deeper definition of that word that in the whirlwind of what we do, most people don't get to that level.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. Actually, I was awakened in the middle of the night last night receiving some downloads, as sometimes happens to me. And if we truly believe in, how do I say this? If we truly believe in one God, and if we believe in oneness, and we believe that God created everything, and that God is actually just pure consciousness, potentially, right? And it created everything, and everything was created from consciousness, and everything is consciousness. And it's all just different ways of consciousness expressing, right? Spiritualization into matter, even. And there's so many different layers to that. It's funny, there's actually a testimonial from a professor that I'd worked with on my website. And I loved what she said. She said, well, before I worked with Alara, my life was one-dimensional, and now I'm not even sure how many dimensions there are. But it's like that. It's like you start to see that there's just this divine design and this magic in every single thing. And it's like you can look at bodies of work like A Course in Miracles comes to mind, where one of the initial trainings in A Course in Miracles, which I have not completed, but intimately somehow know, it's like they start by saying, look at this trash can. Now tell yourself, I know nothing about this trash can. And like reprogramming, looking at every single thing and every single person and just encountering it with absolute openness and curiosity, and understanding that you really don't understand anything about whatever that is. And just starting to expand the perception, expand awareness, expand perception. And yeah, there are different dimensions, different levels of consciousness. Not everything is consciously aware in the way that we are. But yeah, there's so much to explore and so many ways that you can expand your mind around just something as simple as looking at the world with that type of curiosity around what is consciousness? How does it express? I hope that makes sense.
Well, I think I'm sitting here loving all of this and learning every day myself, growing, learning new things. Thinking back to, did little Alara, like, how did this start? What was she like as a child? Did she know she was destined for, as you kind of said earlier, it's becoming more aware or acceptable now, but how does one even evolve into this? Again, just thinking back to little Alara, did she know then? Was she in white clothes and flowers? And obviously, I'm making fun, a little bit of humor in all of this, but trying to get a picture in my mind of, when was Alara always this way? When did this come into being?
Well, I think a big part of the Alara now is, the big part of my goal is getting back to that version, who wasn't actually even Alara. Her name was Amanda. And even that has come from, again, studies of frequency and sound and numerology and, really getting into alignment. And it was all part of the path that I was meant to be on this lifetime. It's kind of like we are the divine playing hide and seek from ourselves. Someone recently said this, and I was like, ooh, I like that. And then I played with it a bit. And we seek ourselves and we find ourselves and we keep repeating. We do it again and again. We hide again and again, right? We go into and out of the sleep. Wouldn't be much of a game if we didn't. But that's the thing, is we forget that we're here to play. This is not to be taken as seriously as most of us do, this life. The systems that run us and control us, these must be shifted. We need to be able to be in our light, to be in our joy, and also joy and gratitude will transmute anything. So if somebody's going through a healing journey, by the way, focus on your joy. What lights you up, that's the thing that's going to heal you. So lean in more to that. Getting back to the childhood answer, it's funny because, as a child, I actually was, my mom was telling me recently, I'm going to tangent a little bit again. I love hot baths. Salt baths are the most amazing thing ever. Highly recommend salt baths to anyone. What a wonderful thing that we live in a time where we can do that. The water just comes out and it's hot. I remember living in like the Middle Ages. I've had all these lifetimes come back, and I just have such a new appreciation for modern conveniences. Where it's like, oh, that's why this is so wonderful, right? Because we didn't always have this. But my mom said, she's like, I remember you came out. My mom was very young. They were teens when they had me. She said, I just remember them putting you in the water, and I watched you, and your eyes were wide open, and you were like, ooh, what is this? And you loved the water from the moment that you came out. And she said, and you were just so alert and so aware. And she's like, I've still never met another baby that was quite as alert and aware. And of course, this is my mom, right? So of course, she's going to say I was the most alert, aware. I was the most wonderful baby, right? So take that into account here. But from there, yeah, I was not as comfortable around other children as I was adults. I spent a lot of time outside. I talked to trees. I talked to rocks. I talked to my dog. And not just like talked to like, oh, that's cute. No, these were my friends. They were not imaginary, I had a couple of encounters as a small child where I actually do remember one in particular where I went over to a neighbor's house and we had a play date, and there were some situations going on in that home that were challenging, and it was not something that the family wanted anyone to be aware of. And yet when I came into contact with the little girl there and we were playing, I just looked at her and I said, why are you sad? And that was a moment, that was a phrase that moment changed my life, because I was not supposed to know she was sad. But somehow I knew there was something in me. There's a connectedness in all of us. The more we start to lean into it and trust it and acknowledge it compassionately, the more evidence, faith provides evidence in so many cases, and this is one. Anyway, that moment, right, it's like I had unknowingly and innocently exposed a wound. And from there on, was not a favorite person, right? And so I felt the repercussions of what connectedness could do when people were in fear or in protection or vulnerable, feeling vulnerable, And so I started that and a couple of other experiences that I can think of pretty clearly. I started shutting those gifts down so that I could fit in, so that I would be liked, so I wouldn't be rejected, so I wouldn't be bullied, because there was a fair amount of bullying that came from that situation afterwards. Again, all just protector parts that people develop to keep themselves safe by making someone else other and putting up that wall. So yeah, that actually did drastically alter my trajectory, right? Because I shut down some of my gifts, some of who I am. And so this is a big part of what I've been stepping into over the last few years, is reopening that and letting it be safe to be in that kind of connection when people want to. Right. Right. There's a time and there's a place. I'm finding more parents, we're living in an age where there are a ton of kids that are being born, young people that are in the school system that are just quote unquote different than they used to be, right? They're neurodivergent. We're giving them lots of different labels. They're highly sensitive. I was highly sensitive. And it can be a superpower. It's such a gift. It's not something that we need to shut down, but we do need to learn to navigate it differently. So I love that you asked that question, and thank you for bearing with me as I followed the flow of it. But it's a really important one for us to ask ourselves, and especially as parents, and as people who care about the next generation and about building a more connected, a more hopeful, a more joyful world. We need to allow kids to be in their light. And being neurodivergent, it's interesting because, well, do you mind if I tangent onto this one too?
Absolutely.
We'll flow with it. Neurodivergence. So it can be challenging, right? Like navigating my 3D world, organizing my books, doing things like that. I can do it, and I can do it very effectively. And as I'm doing it, other things are popping in, and there's some challenges there, right? Because around, from age 0 to about 7 or so, we're in alpha and theta waves. Theta wave, if you think about it, that sweet spot right before you fall asleep, that spot where sometimes you'll have a really lucid dream, or maybe you even jump a little bit, but that's a brainwave state called theta. And it's a really wonderful state to be in for heightened perception and connectedness to other dimensions of reality, to each other. This is that juicy spot where a lot of really awesome psi phenomena happens. I live a lot of my life in alpha and theta. Alpha is a brainwave state that's just a little bit above theta, so it's kind of daydreamy. I live like that. And it can be a little challenging for navigating, following specific directions or doing certain things that are in 3D. And I can navigate all of these brainwave states fluidly, and that's what our kids are being born able to do. It's wonderful for being able to lean in and follow the flow of life. Or, we can go ahead and do things like pop Adderall like I used to make myself be someone I wasn't meant to be and comply to the systems that I needed to work within, right? Or we can shift the systems and we can start to work with the kids and work with the gifts. Anyway, this is a bigger topic for another time, but
I know I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, we could go hours and hours and hours. That part there, though, I feel like, as parents or sometimes as leaders in business, coaches, we know what we had to do to be successful. And we then want to help that next person become successful. So we consciously or unconsciously say, okay, this is how it should be done then. Where the gifts, as you said, pointed out, may be very different. And maybe even if, let's say, that person wants to get to that same place, their personality, their skill sets, they may need to take a different path. So I think a lot of times the coaching comes, or the leadership comes from a place of, well, I care for you, I want to help you get there. Here's what I know, here's how I got there. So you do that too. Whereas, when we get beyond 7th grade or 7 years old and we're in school and it's kind of order, structure, this is, how to best learn and become successful, we shut down that, the joy, the light, the curiosity, those waves that when we're young help us be so much more aware.
And thank you for circling back to that, because age 8, which they would have called in the old esoteric traditions, like some of them will call it the age of reason, right? Why? Well, we start switching into beta brainwave mode, and that is where we navigate best the 3D reality. We also go into our shadow work after that. There's so many things that we really step into the density and the intensity of the density that is the earth realm. And yeah. But I guess my question is, well, a couple things to think about, right? We start to try to impart what we know helped us to become successful. But how many of us really feel like we are a success? And how do we define that?
And one person's success, gosh, we were just talking on this on the podcast we recorded earlier this morning. One person's success can be drastically different than another person's.
Because it's our judgments. It's our ego that decides this is a success. But is your ego really aligned with your soul? With your higher knowing, with the wisdom that's in your body? Are you truly fully in alignment and health in your body? That'll tell you a lot. And are you really lit up? Are you really in your joy? Or is your bank account full and your heart empty? There's so many different ways for people to lean in with compassion and curiosity and not with judgment. Because, if that's what got us to where we are in the first place is a non-neutral heart and a lot of judgment and a lot of systems that told us what was right, wrong, the coulds, the shoulds, the it would be goods, then that's not going to get us out of here. Yeah. So one of the things that you asked, at the beginning, you said, what do you tell people you do? I still don't have a succinct answer for that. But what I do is, just yesterday, I had a group gathering and someone came up and she said, I hope you don't mind. She's like, I just wanted to tell you, I was speaking with someone about you and I called you an illuminator. And I said, an illuminator? And she said, yeah, because you help people to light up and shine. You shine your light in, and then you help them to love their shadows, to love who they are, to know themselves more fully, and then to shine that and emanate it out into the world. And I said, that's actually a pretty good description. Now, how do I do it? I trust the process, and I help other people to lean in and trust their process, just like I've had to trust my own. I don't look back and regret any of the things that I've been through. I love every challenge. I love every person who I would have considered an adversary then. I now see that at a soul level, many of us have agreements to come in and challenge each other. And we take on karma for that. I've seen it play out because I remember my lifetimes. And I remember, I know people who I'm incarnated with in this lifetime who were with me in those other lifetimes, and I've seen the things that they've done or that we've done to each other. And I've actually seen them have the karma actually play out in this lifetime for things that happened. It's fascinating. It's like an automatic program. It just runs, And so how much do you have to love someone to come in and do something really horrendous to them that they might actually have a cracking open moment, even if it kills them, literally in another lifetime, and then come into that next lifetime more fully able to light up, right? There's this polishing and refining of the soul that happens over lifetimes that I say that not from a dogmatic position, but because I have literally witnessed it and remembered it for myself. And I feel very blessed to have been able to see that. Not special. Many of us can do this. We just haven't yet. This is part of the revelations, right? All will be revealed. There's nothing that will be left unsaid or unknown soon. So anyway, not from a dogmatic place, but also revelations. Anyway. There's some wisdom in these writings. There's a lot of allegory too. But sitting with that, it's love your enemies as yourself because it's all you. At the end of the day, back to that oneness concept, it's all you, and love the challenges and remember that you're here playing a divine game in many ways, right? How can you light up? How can you have more joy? How can you be more authentic? How can you figure out what this avatar is capable of, if you want to look at it that way? And how can you, crack open more widely, love more, have more compassion for yourself and others, and see where that takes you. Where did that take us?
Well, that takes me to the question of how do you do that? That you pose the questions there, how do you lean into more joy? How do you find your light? How do you share your light? How do you crack open? How do people do that, or how do you help people get there?
I find that when people start working with me, it's I always used to joke, even in just my health coaching practice before I went, full woo and then back to a middle. I'm actually, believe it or not, this is a middle point. I actually integrate all of the things whenever you really sit with me. What I really do is I sit down and I trust their process and I help them learn to do that too. A lot of people start to experience synchronicities, which are those little God tap moments, where it's like little breadcrumbs that just tell you you're on the right track. You just know it, you feel it. You get the goosebumps, or you have the angel numbers, or you have whatever it is that means something to someone. You start to, in other words, there is an up-leveling in the recognition of patterns, is what I actually would say. And starting to notice patterns to I must be on the right track because these things are happening, or, this just keeps happening. And there's some just little moments of magic that start to unfold in life, and people start to get excited and they get more curious. and then they lean in even more. And those are, and it's just, again, following and noticing those things. But as far as like when we're sitting in sessions or in circles, I love to get circles together because there's so much power in just connecting a group. And every time it's like people that are sitting across from each other have something to offer each other. And as we go through, I don't ever plan those. I just show up. I get out of the way. I actually say, thy will, not my will. Like, in other words, the higher selves of all those present, your souls, let them guide the process. It is not for me to tell you what you need. However, I am a resource who, through this lifetime and many other experiences, am able to access information and share it through the fields. So there's a fair amount of channeling that goes on. I also have access to all of the different systems and modalities I've studied. I'm certified in a couple dozen. And that's just the ones that I'm certified in. I've also sat with masters from lineages around the world and studied all sorts of different traditions. And so wherever that soul has been, I probably have a little bit of a hit on it, on the radar, you know? But moreover, I'm able to just sit with someone and say, you know, let's let your higher self guide this process. And then intuitively, again, clairaudiently, clairsentiently, meaning feeling it in the body, sometimes clear knowing, sometimes I will clairvoyantly, like I will actually get impressions or see things. I just trust my senses. I trust my physical senses and I trust my subtle senses. And I trust their soul to know what they need.
Wow. Well, so I'm thinking, wow, we could go many different directions with this.
It's a really interesting process. This is why it's like, how do I explain what I do? I'm like, you kind of have to come do it because I'm not actually doing it. You're doing it. And we're essentially using me to access you.
And in that way, asking, again, that higher self to come in and guide it, but also what comes out of there, what questions then to ask, guiding a lot of people then kind of knowing, wait, maybe we need to go in one of these directions. What do you feel? Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong. At the end of the day, the goal is to really get in deeper than in a safe way and slower way, get deeper than they've gotten to uncover, discover, rediscover what's underneath.
So examples of things that might come up. For instance, it's a lot of modern psychology is actually based on ancient shamanic techniques. And so sitting with someone, not only have I been through the psychology system on the receiving end of it quite thoroughly, and actually coached quite a number of psychologists, some psychiatrists. Like, it's very interesting to see the people that come to sit with me. They're usually highly educated, and they are looking to serve at a higher level. That's really it. And they understand that they need to be the change that they want to help to see in the world. Truly. It all starts there. So as we're sitting together, well, actually, I noticed that you're writing a note there. What was your curiosity that came up from that?
I was writing more highly educated or higher educated, but wanting to be the change that they want to see in the world.
Yeah. And quite frankly, a lot of the people that I'm sitting with recently, they have been here for many lifetimes serving. And I'm becoming of the belief that myself and some of them, this may be the last one, this may be the full circle. The way that the world is currently, how much there is to be done, how much of a challenge it is just to become yourself. Breaking the habits of being what you're not. This is master level work, and I'm sitting with people and the souls that come through. These are masters. There are many masters among us, and it is so awesome to watch them light up. To watch what I believe I'm witnessing is a Christ consciousness level awakening, not coming from outside, but coming from within humanity. We are waking up,
Christ consciousness. Not many people use those words.
It's very unpolitically correct these days because it's very misunderstood.
And what does that? I feel like if we just left it there, it would continue. Many people might use, instead of curiosity, which we talked about earlier, judgment. What does that Christ consciousness mean?
Yeah. Well, I've learned first off, to address that, I would say I've learned over the years, because I've stepped away from using those terms many times and then come back. And then stepped away and then come back.
That hide and come
we
back.
have a tendency to, it's like we want to make certain belief systems or things right or wrong, or, this is all very old tribal stuff that we have been doing as humanity for a long time. But it's time for, it's time for a collective approach where we bring all of the different perspectives together and find that there's truth in all of them, right? But I find that if there's something that triggers me and makes me want to put up a wall against someone or some belief system, that is something for me to lean into and be curious about, because that's most likely there's something within me to look at. Where is my heart closing? Where am I not able to be compassionate towards someone else, which a lot of times is a reflection of an inability to be compassionate or accepting of some aspect of myself. So there is that piece, just I'll just leave that there for curiosity. Christ consciousness. Well, this is a big question. A lot of dogma is beginning to be stripped away around that. All right, here we go. Well, so I've also had I've had extraterrestrial experiences. What I've found when I've been visited in those instances is that these are beings that they don't carry the denser frequencies that we carry on Earth. This is a very dense place. The fear, the anger, the guilt, the shame, the very old programming that we've been carrying, and those emotions actually generate a density field. They have frequency, they have vibration. We can talk about this scientifically. Folks like David Hawkins, MD, PhD, have done a wonderful job of breaking down the map of consciousness and explaining emotions in terms of frequency and vibration and density levels. Anyway, all of those lower density emotions, they generate a field around us, and it is dense, it's thick. These other beings, they're higher dimensional and they're higher frequency. So when we start talking about, really clearing, doing the shadow work and clearing all of the shame and the guilt, reintegrating the inner child, doing these different types of things, which I started to allude to earlier and then flowed with away from the shamanic and these other pieces, which, by the way, are not dissimilar to what Yeshua did. Yeshua being Jesus. Official name was Yeshua, historically. So, and he himself traveled around and sat with many masters from many different traditions. Joseph of Arimathea was a merchant. His uncle used to travel with him. And there's lots of other things that I could share on that from research and remembrance. This podcast is taking a very interesting turn. But yeah, when I've had these experiences with higher dimensional beings, high frequency beings, they have a hard time being in the presence of humans who have dense emotions present, who have density fields around them, right? Which is protective, if you think about it, right? It's just, they're very high frequency, so they vibrate at unconditional love, joy, peace, these types of frequencies. That is the Christ consciousness, right? Because if you're truly in a state of compassion, unconditional love, joy, peace, you're you. All of that other stuff comes from traumas and experiences that then program us to put up protection, that then takes us away from being an authentic expression, takes us away from being our true self. It takes us away from the God within. Tension, when tension arises in our body, that is, you could consider that sin, because it's stepping away from the trust that there is a God. There's within you, there's divinity, and there's connection to God. And you can trust that to guide your life. You can trust that to follow your heart. And the heart is neutral, you know? So that, like, the Christ consciousness can awaken within all of us. He was here to live and embody that for us and to show us that way. And it was a heart-centered way of living. It was living from a place of unconditional love and compassion. And there's so much more I could say about that. But yeah, I mean, this is, and it really, what he was doing as well is it prepares us to be part of, if you believe this, and if you don't, okay, it's fine. At least you got to watch this gal named Alara who was dressed all in white talk about some really weird stuff on this podcast. Or maybe it resonates with you really deeply. And if you're a little bit repelled by it, it might be an opportunity to lean in, because that might be a protector part.
And we do this podcast, and we hear from others who come on and talk about helping people find who they are, or they ask questions, like, or just hearing people out there in life. When you sit back and ask what feels like should be a simple question, most people, maybe two questions, most people can't answer it. Who are you? You know, not what are you, not what hats do you wear. Who are you? And maybe, I don't know which one's harder. What do you want? Even, and I'm still not fully having answered that. And maybe it is an evolution over time as you grow and learn. But I feel so many people get those negative frequency energies, the tension, the up the spine, just the creepy crawlies, whatever you want to call it. What a simple question, yet a difficult answer for us in this time, this day, this age.
Yeah. Well, and that's absolutely and understandable. We've created a monster, this world. We're totally encumbered by our knowledge. And in that process, we've lost wisdom. And I'm grateful for my journey and my process, and having leaned in and trusted it, even when my family and other people were like, we think you're losing it. Your mind has cracked. And I'm like, well, it's cracked open. So is my heart. Because going back to that neurodivergence piece, right? It's far more dissociative to take a pill and lock ourselves into one brainwave mode so that we can live within this box than it is to stop, relax, learn to re-regulate our nervous system, take off some of the pressures and the constraints of having to have so much, do so much, be so much for everyone else, in order to just unwind and be ourselves and be connected to the multidimensional nature of who we actually are as a being, not just this. The multidimensional nature of reality, multiple dimensions of reality. It is a fascinating and beautiful journey. And it'll bend your mind a little bit. And that can be fun too, and it's okay. It's the labels that we've put on all of that is just like, anyway, I could go on and on about that. But yeah, well, so I'm grateful to be able to say I can answer that question, at least in part. I'm an infinite being who has been around for eons, who has lived many lifetimes on this planet and others. I've had experiences in the past and the future, all actually kind of happening at once. If you look into physics, time is not what it appears to be. And I go on and on and on and on. And boy, that takes a lot of pressure off of this lifetime, doesn't it? And yet gives me great understanding as to what it is I came to do in this one, which is to fully light up and help others do the same. And what do I want to be? What do I want? I want to become love incarnate. And I want to see what that does for me and for humanity.
how do you even say anything after that, Alara? That's not fair. I'm trying to write it all down.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm just here for it all. And the great thing is I've learned to trust my process. So I don't have to know everything right now. And that's part of the fun. Because otherwise, what would be the point of the game of hide and seek?
And there's going to be people who are listening thinking, when you say that, be like, no, I need to know it all. I need to have all the answers now.
They probably turned it off at Christ consciousness. We're good. But no, yes. And love that part of you and be curious about it. What's that about? Where did that start? What's that from? What is it about you that says you're not enough exactly as you are in this moment, that you have to have it all figured out right now? And that it's not okay that you haven't. Because again, remember, it's a game. It doesn't have to be as serious as we make it. We can do everything with joy. Mother Teresa used to say, she's like, even if you're sweeping the floor, do it with your whole being. And if you can't do it with your whole being, you're probably not supposed to be doing that. Find that thing that lights you up. Follow your joy. Follow your heart. The ancient Egyptians, this is where I had a guide come through who worked with Anubis, and he was sharing with me about the Book of the Dead and how it's not the Book of the Dead. That's our fear lens that we ran it through. It's the book of coming forth by day. It's about the ascension. It's about lighting up and following your heart. Living a joy-filled, heart-centered life. Taking the boat through the underworld. By the way, this density that we're in on Earth, this is the underworld, y'all. But it's like, hop on the boat, ride down the river, float with it. Don't worry about the crocodiles and the rocks. You're in a boat. You have a divine plan.
So when you were talking earlier about, so many people doing and being for others or what others, I sat there and thought, there's probably so many women, so many people in general, maybe my age, who I am as a person, as a mom, professional, career, etc., that hitting home with and for me. How does one so I think a lot of people are saying exactly like, this is what I need to know. Who am I? How do I uncrack? How do I let go? When somebody is ready to work on that transformation, like literally, how does somebody do this? With the people you've worked with, how do you sit with them? I'm totally going to say the wrong words here. Guide them through or help them through to open that up, crack it open.
There have been many systems and lineages, traditions developed over many, many years, many lifetimes. There is a reason that there are so many. Because, the journey to awakening and becoming is very individual. Even though there are some commonalities, right? This is again where, for instance, when I sit down with somebody, I ask their soul to guide the process. I would say the first thing that we do most of the time is, again, shed some density. What are the traumas from this lifetime and other lifetimes? And those usually those will come through. There are some inner child pieces that want to be reintegrated. There might be some other lifetimes where, say we were persecuted for speaking our truth. There are these different levels and layers to our self, our soul, and our present day personality that want to come up to the surface and be loved and healed and reintegrated into us. Because a lot of times when we have a trauma or an experience, we leave a part of ourselves in that moment. And this is where you get into like modern psychology would call it parts work or family systems, things like that. In shamanism, they would do soul retrievals, and there are other systems in various different Asian lineages, and there are all these different traditions from around the world that have a very similar way, they call it something different, but it's addressing the same type of thing. It's calling those parts home and reintegrating them. And when you bring back the part that's stuck in that moment, you also usually bring back some sort of a gift or a little bit of a little bit more of authentic expression, joy, whatever it is that wants to come back home, you bring it all back. So it sort of starts with that. It's shedding those denser emotions and coming back into compassion, coming into wholeness. It's becoming, there's an expression, the perfect parent of the perfect child of the perfect parent. Getting outside of the human parentage, right, and the human experience, right, and realizing like we're a child of something greater. And that something greater is universal, ever loving, and unconditionally supportive. Loves you more than you can ever possibly imagine. And wants you to come back to wholeness, wants you to love yourself. And so coming into more of that. And so that's a process of, again, just sitting and going inside and really looking at what's there. Looking at the shadows, looking at the protector parts that you've developed that are really not you. They're not you. They're ego pieces that you developed to navigate the world, and they got you this far. But usually if we're sitting together, you're looking to go a little bit further. You're looking for something different. So we know that there are some shifts that need to be made. I would say that is step number one, is really looking at that. And as we go into that, right, then these emotions come, the grief and the anger and the just rage, sacred rage sometimes arises where it's like, all these how could we do this to each other? How could I have done this to and then there's this forgiveness that comes in, right? As we go into feeling those pieces, because a lot of us have shut those emotions down because they're not comfortable. They're not pleasant. So we judge them as negative. We put labels on them. They just are. They're part of our fullness, right? But we have to, as we go into that and we open up that, the equal and opposite becomes true. Once we allow ourselves to feel these things, we also open up the possibility to feel the equal and opposite. So if you want to call that negative and unpleasant, okay. But as you allow yourself to discover that you can be with this fullness and be okay, move through it, be with it, you discover your strength in that area, you open up the equal and opposite opportunity to be true and to feel that fullness and to step into that part of your being and your expression. And then it just keeps expanding. So that's a place to start. It's the emotional processing. That's one thing, right? And starting to break down the ego programming that came along with those experiences, bringing back some of your gifts, bringing back your fullness, learning to hold yourself and reparent yourself, repartner yourself if you've been through trauma in other relationships, and most of us have. Understanding and knowing your shadow, knowing what you're fully capable of in the depths of we like to think we're good. We just are. A lot of things that are divine, they don't appear it because God's neutral. Really, like the heart and God, like there's a lot of neutrality in there where it's like it just is. It's like then you get into like a great example would be Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu sacred text. And Arjuna, the warrior, sits with Krishna, the deity, and they're watching a battle unfold, and Arjuna is just outraged. And he's like, how can you allow this to happen? Why aren't you helping? And Krishna just says, oh, Arjuna, and he laughs and he says, I'm all of it. On both sides. Because remember, oneness. And this is, then you get back into like Yeshua, and it's like, if they slap one cheek, turn them the other. Why? Well, it's you. You're going to strike down yourself? Do you know, so there's these pieces, and it's interesting because we start to sort of navigate, and the heart just opens and opens. Boy, I really tangented there. I'm going to pull back a little bit. A bit. But yeah.
And again, I've worked on doing my own healness and discovery, and trying to get back to that wholeness. So much of what you said there resonated, as far as when you put up a wall for protection, that wall keeps everything out or keeps everything in, whichever way. So if you're keeping out hurt and pain, you're also keeping out the love and the joy that could come in too, and also could come out that you could be giving to others. So that spoke to me, along with, again, fully lighting up, helping others light up. The other piece was this is where I think it takes a professional to help you go through these things, but when going back to that inner child or unpacking some of these things, also making sure that you don't stay there and live there, that you, as you mentioned, heal it, integrate it, learn what you need to learn from it, and I don't know if move on is the right word, but well, you might say what the right word is.
Well, I think it's releasing what's not serving anymore. Just release it. Thank you. Gratitude for the journey. Gratitude for that emotion or entity or piece. And then I release you, and then calling in more of your own signature frequency, who you really are, and embodying more of that, more of your own I am, and I always in my sessions, I almost always, if not always, say, I ask that in divine time and right order, as context is ready for us to integrate what we receive, whatever's ready to rise to the conscious awareness does, But divine time and right order, that's a thing, not forcing, just allowing your unfolding, allowing your process, trusting your process, and sitting in the wonder of it all as you learn who you are. As you get some of the densities and the other things out of the way, right? You call in more of the joy, you call more of the authentic expression in, and you start to anchor in your signature frequency, who you are at a soul level, and you start to emanate that. And then that starts to attract more of what's in alignment for you. Like there's this, you start vibing with life.
I like that, start vibing with life, which, and I thought about earlier as you were talking about density of certain emotions, those heavier ones, the fear, the anger, the anxiety, whatever all of those are underneath, the sadness, that is denser. So you're not allowing a lot of the good to come in, and in whatever light or good you have, it's not going to shine as brightly as it could for others with being in the muck of that denseness.
Yeah. It's well, actually the image they're showing me right now is, that's funny. I had a horse when I was a kid, and they're actually showing the horse like kicking mud over a light bulb. So anyway, I get images sometimes, right? But yeah, it's like a thin layer of mud or dust over a light bulb. Let's clean that off.
What, I know you've worked with many, many different people, and I mean, are there any amazing transformations, or without being specific, obviously, or identifiable things that you have seen or witnessed or helped people work through?
Well, I have some pretty awesome testimonials on my website, created by a Mitchell Blackwood Productions. Am I saying that correctly? It's a great company. Does good work.
Which is great, because then they've already put that out there. So those aren't necessarily confidential or things we can't share.
Yeah. And some of those I have. Well, actually, this is fun. So I was in the airport. We purchased a place in Sedona. I'm going to be leading deep dives and immersions for people out there. They can come out and spend one-on-one time with me and go deep in the vortex energy, which that'll really peel some things off quickly. You'll be ready for that. So I was hopping on the plane in Phoenix, and I look over as I'm getting on the plane, and I'm like, gosh, I really think I know that woman. I think that's somebody I coached years ago, in health coaching. And I was working in a pain management clinic. Anyway, so I get on the plane. I'm like, wouldn't that be funny if that was that person I used to know? And so I popped her a text, and then the seats stayed open. I was on Southwest. You choose your own seats. And I was like, I saw the image of her sitting next to me. I'm like, she's going to sit right next to me, isn't she? And they're like, yeah, she's going to sit right next to you, and you're going to have a conversation about these things that you're doing now, because this is somebody I just worked with on nutrition and other things. Anyway, she, sure enough, comes down the aisle, doesn't even realize it's me, because I look different than I did a few years ago. And her and her husband, and they sit down, and I looked over and I was like, oh, hey, name. And she's like, you're kidding. And I was like, no. I said, that's so funny. I saw you in there and I just knew you were going to sit next to me. I like saw it and happening, and here you are. And she was like, so she said, you know what? I have thought so many times about you. Our time together really changed my life. And she's like, I feel great. Thank you. You know, and I think now they're looking at starting a family or things like that. You know, it was lovely. And then she's like, so what have you been up to? And I started telling her, she's like, you've been busy. So I guess where I'm going with that is specific of examples of transformations. I could share many. I will share some things in the book, you know, again, respecting confidence. But I hear it all the time, and I feel really, really blessed in that. And I can't tell you how many times I walk away from moments like that and tear up, and I'm just so grateful because I said yes to myself. And in saying yes to myself, I have helped others to say yes to themselves. And then there's a ripple effect that spreads out from there. And this is, you know, again, this is how, like, people are always looking for ways to go out and change the world. But you can't change the world until you're you. You don't know what you came to do that's going to change the world until you are you. So start there. And that's it. And everything that I've done along the way, it's like, well, the thing that helped me, okay, sound healing helped me. I got certified in that. Nutrition helped me. I went to school for that. You know, I just never stop learning. I never stop growing. The psychic abilities, I can teach you that. You know, anything that has helped me along the way, and the transformations are many. Some of them, I will add this. There's another person that was last night at our gathering, and she won't mind because she is a testimonial on the website, and it's gone on since then. She was having some heart palpitations and some symptoms. She was seeing a cardiologist that I've worked with previously, wonderful, very talented doctor, and just nothing was coming up. Everything looked fine. Scans look fine, blood look fine, everything's fine. And yet she's having these palpitations. She's having these blood pressure issues occasionally pop up. And she's very psychically gifted, and finally stepped into allowing that to be true for her after, you know, we worked together in clinic. We worked on the nutrition. We got Hashimoto's and some other things under control, got her out of those diseased states. And then yet she was still having these other things come up. So she came back to me and she said, I think there's something more. And this is when the higher self was ready to go, hey, yeah, there is more. It's time to check into these other perceptions. It's time to know this other part of your gifts and how you're here to serve. She was a nurse, often worked with people who were dying. And it turns out she's a fantastically talented medium. And we were just exploring yesterday, you know, about how when spirits come through to her, she gets sensations and symptoms. You know, she'll get a little flutter in the heart. As she started stepping in more to just acknowledging that this was true for her, and all of the many things that happen to her where she's constantly around people that are dying, she's like, maybe I'm like a death doula, or, you know, like she's exploring different things is the point. And the symptoms don't happen because she doesn't need them anymore, you know, like when they do, it's because there's something trying to get her attention. She stops, she asks what it is. It's really remarkable to see. And she's like, yeah, I don't need the medical care anymore because I know exactly what my body's telling me. And, you know, I'm at ease, and so my body's at ease. So it's just interesting. Again, like there are so many different ways we get messages, you know, and that's the transformation is, just watching people become more and more and more themselves, and become comfortable about talking about that. It's really fun to watch people just come out and they're like, yeah, this is the thing that happens to me, and people are like, whoa, wait, what? And then a lot of times they'll stop and they'll have a moment, you know, sometimes. Right? And then the conversation begins, and this is the ripple effect.
I'm sitting here thinking back to that day almost 3 years ago when we, not quite 2.5, whichever, when we did meet, and that kind of like, oh, let's share and let's be open. And I remember thinking, oh, my husband's read a lot about this. You have to meet my husband. I don't know that you were expecting that but as you just repeated or said, you know, you put yourself out there in an open, curious, loving way. And I have seen it where others have said, you know what? I've kind of been, into some of that stuff too lately and trying to figure myself out. And hey, and then there's just more people out there who I think are learning and ready and wanting a lot of what you talked about today, the wholeness, the light, the, getting rid of those dense energies. I know from, personal experience in many different ways, you work with people one-on-one, you have groups and circles and ceremonies, you have different retreats, now the potential down in Arizona. What are all the ways that you help people or work with them?
So I see a need and then I respond to that need. I'm always open to new opportunities and ways to work together. I am looking to get out and speak more, channel more, do more groups, gather community. And again, as we sit in community and we start to realize these paranormal experiences are actually not para, they're actually quite ordinary. They just happen and it's not a big deal. Like, this is normal. This is connected rather than dissociative, which is what humanity has been for a very long time. So I love gathering community. I'm always looking for opportunities to come in and, I serve cacao and we gather in circle and we'll go into it. Whatever it is that's coming up for people, we can work on that. We can work with that. I do sound healing. I do lots of other things that we can do in those small group or community gatherings. So definitely hopping on my email list, staying in touch. I send out the Unmanic Monday newsletter every week that has lots of tips and insights just based on things that are coming through to me intuitively that would be helpful to be shared and be supported. So there's that piece. The gathering, I put out events and lots of other opportunities all the time. The one-to-ones, I do containers where people can work with me we'll set a period of time. They come in, we have a few goals, and we work on those goals. Usually they're something physical, something emotional, and something perceptual, or life-oriented. So we set that container, and it's amazing to see how things just fall into place and some magic really happens. And then there are the retreats. We've got the property in Sedona, which sits right near Bell Rock. We're just right off of national wilderness that goes on for miles and miles and miles. It's a really cool place to be. I see bobcats and mountain lions and tarantulas and crazy stuff, right? It'll get you out of your comfort zone. Which is, by the way, one of the best ways to have a breakthrough, right? When we have a pattern interrupt, it's one of the funny things about actually wearing white. When my guides were like, you need to wear white every day, I was like, I'm not doing that. We're not doing that. They're like, no, you need to do it. Go wear white and be happy. You will really interrupt some people's days. It's a pattern interrupt, and that gives us an opportunity to go, wait. It resets the system and allows us to see things differently. Anyway, yes, coming out to Sedona, doing some deep dives. I'm also, I do, everything that I do is spirit-led. So I do a lot of retreats, and when I do those, it's because I was told where to do them, when to do them, and how many people I would have. The exact details are given to me. I set it up, and then I show up, and magic happens. So I just got back from Bali. We'll have another Bali retreat in the next year or so. I have retreats that I'm being foretold will happen around Mount Shasta and a few other places over the coming year. So more details on that coming soon. Again, the best way to stay in touch is to hop on my newsletter or just pop me a message if you're local to St. Louis and want to get invited to things. I'm happy to have people on that list.
We'll make sure at the end we share all your different websites or places to get a hold of you. Thinking about, I know I've heard in circles, cacao ceremony, people go, what's that? Yeah. Like, we eat chocolate? What are you talking about? So I imagine this, which I'm always down to eat some chocolate. I imagine people might be like, what are they talking about? What is that?
Yeah, cacao. So that came into my life a few years ago. I've been down to Guatemala, to the jungles, and to Lake Atitlan to study 10 days at a time, once a year over the last couple of years. And then prior to that, I studied virtually back during the COVID era with they called him the chocolate shaman. One of my favorite masters that I have ever sat with. And Yeah. So cacao it's again, going back to my clinical nutrition piece, right? I nerded out on it starting there because it is one of the 3 most nutritionally dense things that you can put into your body. Women especially tremendously benefit from it, even just for the magnesium content level. Like most of us are deficient in magnesium these days, and that can cause a lot of hits on the adrenals, hormonal balance, lots of things. So the science behind cacao as a superfood is immense. It supports neurotransmitter production, so higher levels of serotonin and dopamine in the body. And most people have heard of those. Those are mood boosting and focus boosting, focus enhancing. But I find that it's some cacao, depending on where it's grown, is higher in caffeine. The particular cacao that I work with, which you can access through my website, is very low in caffeine, but it's high in theobromine. So it's a heart opener. It's very good for embodiment. It settles us into and regulates our nervous system instead of stimulating it and buzzing us, zinging us up, right? It actually allows us to ground into our body, be completely present in the moment, boost our mood and support it, and be able to focus in and navigate lucid and more flexible states of consciousness as well. It'll enhance meditation and it'll help enhance your ability to do your books. It's an amazing, amazing medicine. I like to use this when we circle up for our conversations and our community connections, because it is also known as a sacred medicine that, because it's a heart opener, helps people to feel their emotions, be embodied, be present, be in connection. Again, you've got the mood boosting piece. It is a wonderful enhancer for conversation and connection. And it is a sacred, sacred medicine for that reason. It's also an entheogen, a god plant. Most people know of entheogens. They think of psychedelics. This is not a psychedelic, but it's very psychoactive. It'll take you to the door. It's not going to kick you through to another dimension. If you want to go to that other dimension, you can probably access it through meditation if you've had enough cacao, which is lovely, right? Just because, again, it allows us to navigate those fluid, neurodivergent states of consciousness, those different brain waves, with greater ease.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's some people would wonder, especially in this space where you talk about medicine, and it's a plant, and is it a psychedelic? It's purely like they take cacao to make chocolate to what, it is just plain old real cacao. It's not, for those who may or may not have thoughts or feelings about psychedelics or whatever it is, again, saying that, no judgment, that this is a place where you're not entering a zone of, I'm getting into that, drug psychedelic space. It's a purity space to sort of try to help open the heart.
Yeah, and we could again have a whole other show on all of that, all of the judgments and all of the things around all of that, and all of the science and all of the healing and the support and the science that has come out around all of that. And yes, what is medicine?
In the medicine that we call prescription medicine or medicine, what is that?
And most of it's based on plants, by the way. It's herbal medicine, and then refining down to the exact molecule that gives the desired effect, and then concentrating that, and then we get prescription pharmaceutical medicine. Not all of it, but a lot of it started that way. Some of it even started as color, believe it or not. There's a whole interesting story around purple synthetic dye and how that started antibiotics, the whole sulfa family of drugs. There's so much that we could get into. Color is medicine, consciousness is medicine, plants are medicine. There's so much, right? But anyway, back to, chocolate, good stuff.
And we could, as we said at the beginning of this, probably talk for hours, days on all different avenues, lights of the spectrum. At the end of the day, I think so much of it comes back to, breaking down, pulling away the density and the barriers and the walls of protection to release. I love that you use that word, because that's probably one of my words for this year, is release what's not serving you and step into, become your full true self. And in order to get there, really taking the time and the space to get to know your full self again.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to opening your heart, trusting your process. Yeah, getting out of your own way and stepping into your own magic and your own power. That's it. Really. Just that. That's all.
I'm like, oh, wow, mic drop. There's not much else you could follow that up with and say. And I love how at the end you said, that's all.
Just that.
That's just that.
Yeah.
But maybe by the construction of so much of the world around us, that, again, it's just breaking all that down and getting back to the child, the curiosity, the love, the joy, the play that we did when we were young, before the world, the interactions encouraged us to start building these bigger constructs and walls.
Play heals. There is some incredible science. Even there was an article, I think it was in Nature a few years ago, about how we could undo 7 generations of epigenetic shifts and trauma. Shifts our epigenetics. If you get into like genetic and DNA expression, we could again do a whole other show on the science behind that. I do love science. I love that we have ways to put words to and articulate some of these things. And it goes beyond that too. It's really quite simple. It's like, yeah, play heals. Everyone should know that. Like that's pretty elementary, right? And also scientifically, we can prove that play heals, and it actually does reverse epigenetic expression. It does heal us in a very real and tangible way. But yeah, getting back to the play, getting back to the wonder of life, getting back to your joy, getting back to why you came. You didn't come. Suffering can be part of life, right? Happens. We learn a lot from it. If that's the way you want to play, or if that's what, part of the path, okay, lean in. The resistance really, like so many times, those what really causes the suffering. Just noticing that you can just be with whatever comes. You can take it as it comes. You can be with it. You can find compassion for yourself, for others, for the world. And I think the greatest challenge is constantly just coming back to a place of love, like finding a way to just love it all, right? I don't know. That's the mastery, maybe.
And if you think about what, that one smile gives you in a day, or that one real hug, when you're hurting and you want healing or help or love, it's that, that long, just comforting, hug is such good medicine for the soul. That really, as you were saying, the forcing and the resistance takes a lot more energy drained from us than living in the love and the hugs and the smiles.
Yeah. There's a moment that comes to mind. There was a master coach and shaman trained in the Peruvian lineage that I studied psychedelic integration coaching with. At the encouragement of physicians that I worked with in a pain management clinic, they were looking for ways to help their patients, and they were only getting so far. So when all of that research started coming out, they were like, go study it. So I did. So I sat with this teacher and healer, and he gave me a hug, and he said, now try again. What was that? Like without judgment, he was like, was that your hug? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, let's try that again. I did not realize how rigid and stiff my body was at the time. I definitely didn't sit like this. And he hugged me again, and he was like, okay, now lean into me. Okay, now relax your rib cage. Okay, now settle some more. Lean into me. I got you. Let yourself be held. And I didn't realize that I had not let myself be held since I was very, 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 very small. Very small. And that was a really interesting moment. And then after that, I came home to my husband and I hugged him differently. And he was like, what happened? I was like, I realized how rigid I've been. And the thing is, in coaching, we always say how you do one thing is how you do many things. I was rigid in so many areas of my life. And again, I'm so grateful that those physicians, they were like noticing that I had these perceptions and different, and also really eager to go beyond and help their patients on a higher level. And so they were willing to take a risk and invest in something that was questionable at the time. And I'm so grateful that they sent me to study that, because I had really thought I had some things figured out with the functional medicine testing and the nutrition and all these pieces, which are part of it. And then I went, and something as simple as a hug had a massive effect on my life. And understanding how rigid I still was in so many areas, and the tension that was creating in my nervous system, and how that was really symbolic of not trusting myself or the process of life, or that there was some greater meaning to any of it, that there was any reason for anything. Can't tell you what that reason is, by the way. I don't know if we ever will. Still asking that. But yeah, a hug, something that simple. There's so much we can learn from the ways that we do things, and how we show up, and just like the nuances that can have profound and lasting effects and shifts across all areas.
All of that good stuff from just talking about a hug.
Wisdom in the simple things. Again, we can also go into all the scientific knowledge, and we have so very much of it. But there's wisdom in the simple moments, and just in leaning into being completely and totally relaxed and present.
I really can't think of a better way to close this out. And I know if we kept going, we'd still have great things. But, at some point, we're sitting here kind of Indian style, cross-legged, etc. We'll have to get up. So you closed that out beautifully. I mentioned earlier we'd circle back to exactly how people can find you. Obviously, there's the website, but sharing that with people so that they know what to look for online or wherever to find you.
Yeah, so I spell my name Alara, Alara, alarahealing.com. And it was meant to be Alara, healing, and healing double meaning. I'm still healing. You're healing. We're healing together. alarahealing.com. And you can also find that on, woo, we had a good conversation here, Instagram @AlaraHealing. Yeah.
Thank you for the love, the light, the wisdom, the fun, and the enlightenment in so many areas. And you're touching people's lives and their souls and their hearts. And I'm glad we were able to share just a wee bit of that today. So follow or find her for more. But thank you for coming in today and letting our journeys continue to intertwine.
Thank you.
If you like what we shared today or any of the content we've had, please like, subscribe, share, whatever all those little buttons are on all the different podcast places, so we can keep bringing helpful information your way. Thank you.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.